Hi, I'm Isabelle,
Hi, I'm Carter.
and this is our presentation on crisis communication from chapter 11 in our book. So this is what we're going to go over today. We're going to walk you through what an in-house crisis looks like for a company and organization, the actions you should take to execute the crisis plan, and then now that it's a Zoom presentation, we'll just have an example of a crisis discussion that we would have in class at the end of our presentation. So, a crisis is the dissemination of information by an organization to address a crisis that impacts customers and or the organization's reputation. We will be covering this topic throughout the entire presentation and going over the steps on how to handle this and plan ahead for it. After a crisis occurs, there is a very short window of time. When a journalist or someone who's curious reaches out to you about a crisis, refer back to your schedule and ask them to give you 10 minutes and make sure you call them back after those 10 minutes. These 10 minutes are very important for an organization and helps you refrain from denial, pointing blame, lying, being negative or rude or oversharing about an issue that you are not sure about yet. 10 minutes should allow you enough time to talk with the important communicators within your company, and allow the emergency communications team to come up with a small message that will essentially apologize, take credit for, and give the audience hope for your company and for the future. The three steps are to digest, reflect, and analyze.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about 280 characters. Basically, what that means is when your company or organization releases that statement, it needs to be extremely concise and consistent. What I mean by that is that when the crisis first happens, you might not have all the information available, but it's important to release the things that you do have available. But the book specifically states that it should be in small pieces and what they refer to them as tweets. So the tweets will be prepared ahead of time and will be modified as new information comes out. So the company just needs to have those prepared. And each time a new piece of information comes out, it'll be added to the tweet. But essentially, the two most important things are just being concise and consistent, because you don't want to overshare like we previously have stated, and you just want to keep the message with the exact information that's available to you, so you keep your audience informed. This way, if it's concise and consistent, it'll build credibility for your company, as your audience will begin to view you as stable and organized. Next is just the crisis communication plan. And basically, we're going to be going through various steps that the company or organization should think about and take during a crisis. So then we need to definitely figure out who's going to speak, and then also have a designated backup when this crisis occurs. When you're picking who should speak, you need a spokesperson who is going to be able to communicate to the audience and also will benefit the company. So this spokesperson should definitely have credibility. So most people would jump to their CEO, but your CEO is not always the best suited for this, because their public speaking skills may not be great, and or their mental state may not be in the right place to be presenting to a group of people because of the chaos of the crisis. So definitely need to find the right person who is credible at the company, very literate, composed, and concise. This is finding the right person to represent the company at this moment is super crucial and key to how the rest of the crisis will play out and the way your audience will view the company from then on out. And also, this person needs to have credibility within the company, because all of the employees and the public will be looking at that person for comfort. So the next thing is bridge with ATM. ATM stands for acknowledge, transition, and message. So first, the most important step, I believe, and to do would be to acknowledge what has happened. Make sure you step in and own up to what has happened, whether it was your company's fault or not. It's just important to acknowledge that you're demonstrating active listening and you're being reflective in this tone that says, basically, essentially is paraphrased to say exactly what happened, that it's your company's fault, or that your company's problem, and then how you're going to then take whatever has happened. And that's a part of the transition, is that you're taking exactly what occurred and then transitioning to what you'll be doing to improve whatever has happened. And then your message is just absolutely everything the way it should absolutely be considerate, concise, informative, and most specifically apologetic to your company and to your key stakeholders and to your audience.
So another lesson is to always take dessert, which always means that at the end of most interviews, there will be a statement by an interviewer or whoever you're talking to about anything else to add. And you should always say yes to this. This is a time that you should use to reiterate any previous statements you've made, any statements about your company, and you should not introduce any new information during this time. This should be a time to highlight your company and say that we strive for the best that we can give, and here's what we stand for, and make sure to leave the press or whoever you're talking to on a good note about your company, especially during a time of crisis. So this is plan purpose, and the main question of this lesson is, what is the objective of the plan? You should be writing a couple paragraphs about what the plan needs to accomplish. For example, how to communicate internally and externally during a crisis, with your employees and with the public, because both internal and external communication is very important during this time, to make sure that your company feels safe and informed, as well as the public. How to make sure your business still runs during this time, how you make sure that everything is still running smoothly, and protecting the reputation of your company as well. Having the CEO sign this plan, to show that you're committed to following this plan, is also a very good tactic as well. So risk scenarios and issues management, is a tactic for you to list the most likely problems or issues that your company might face. So depending on the company, there might be situations like an explosion, a vehicle crash, a public health risk, or improper use of social media. This list should include this from the smallest things to the very largest things, and make sure that you have any ideas in between that make you more aware of potential situations that can happen, so you can create a plan to help fix those things. So incident assessment, has to do with the past two slides as well. This is an assessment of basically how potentially different levels of an incident can affect your company and the public. Categorizing these levels from low, medium to high. Low would be a minor incident with no to minor injuries and no deaths. And a high incident would be an absolutely drastic incident, like an explosion or something, that resulted in many casualties.
So roles and responsibilities, this essentially means that you need to have an emergency communications team within your company that are solely the purpose of them is to help control chaos and keep things organized and basically build out this plan when the crisis takes place. It's always a good idea to keep the team relatively small, just so that it will eliminate the chaos in the room as they're going through the plan and figuring out different tactics that they want to use. It'll also eliminate having way too many opinions. So keeping it small is just a good idea always. This is something that this is really important because you need to coordinate with your key stakeholders. These are people that either invest in your company. So really just anyone who invests in your company. So you need to keep informed and updated as the crisis builds and as it takes place. This will protect and as you inform them, you also need to comment on how you will protect them from it affecting them directly. So when you do this, you need to write it on a list and figure out your audiences that will be most affected, and plan to communicate to them on your rollout. And then make sure also that everyone in your company and organization is aware of what's going on, to prevent the immense amount of emails and phone calls that could be coming from them. So internal communication is also extremely important. Your employees are also your key stakeholders as well. Media response guidelines. Okay, so this is basically as this is happening, as your crisis is occurring, you should go ahead and preempt what kind of questions that could happen and create a list that could potentially be asked by reporters or journalists. This will ensure you that if you're asked any of these questions, you'll be really well prepared, composed, and direct to answer them. So that's specifically, honestly, for your spokesperson, that they're kind of prepped with these kind of questions before. It's also really important to go over any kind of basic public speaking skills with your spokesperson, just such as things like make sure they're maintaining eye contact, that they have positive body language, and they're avoiding any use of jargon as they're communicating to the audience. Next, I want to talk about website preparation. So making sure you have a statement or ready for release to go on the homepage of your website or social media platform that you use mostly is super important, because people are going to be heading to those pages to look for information. So keeping people updated on those is very important. And then you also want to make sure that you're prepared for any kind of crisis that could be happening on your website or social media platforms. So in that case, if your website or social media platform gets hijacked or fails, it would also be really important to have a backup website where you can be posting that kind of information. Honestly, this is just the best way to keep the public and your audience informed on what's going on in the crisis as updates roll in.
So this is the emergency communications action steps. As I talked about in my previous slides, during this step, this is the time that you will list out a step-by-step plan for each level, low, medium, and high. So this plan is meant to serve as a checklist for creating plans very quickly during a crisis. Things are very, very confusing during a crisis, and having a step-by-step plan, or not even a plan, but a list of steps that you're able to follow during this time, will be very helpful in being very successful in crisis communicating. This will look different from company to company, depending on values and priorities. And this final step, the incident review and evaluation, is very important. This final step is to set a timeline to review the crisis response and ask what went good and what could be changed. You should set a timeline for this review about 15 to 30 days after the crisis happens, just so you can set a timeline for yourself. Once this review is done, then implementing the new lessons into a new plan for the next time is very important. The things that went wrong or the things that did well, you should make sure to highlight in your plan for the next time. It is also good to put in other things together, like emails and phone numbers for important company heads, sample holding statements, and anything else that would help you quickly respond to a crisis as well.
And then last but not least, this was going to be our crisis scenario where we were going to go through this and take it step by step with the class, going through the crisis communication plan that we just explained. However, we're on Zoom, so we won't be doing that. But if we were in class, this is what we were going to do. And that's the end. So Duke, if you have any questions, or Ben, let us know. Thank you.
Thank you.